Hello and welcome back, Midnight Readers. We're jumping right back into Once Upon a Fall. So far where we're at is Shelly and her best friend Blake, as well as his older brother Ben and his friend Nick, have all embarked on a road trip from California all the way to haunted Vermont. They were going to enjoy the fall season for the first time, firsthand, and to go on a paranormal investigation. However, after the paranormal investigation, things started to get a little interesting, if you will. Shelly was starting to see things. There were mysterious graves, which they ended up discovering weren't what everybody thought they were, and did in fact have human remains in them. One of which was still alive. So they are handling that. There was an altercation where Nick feigned innocence, but he was actually the culprit, and he was attacking Noah. When he realized that his story or his fabrication was no longer being believed, he came and tried to attack Shelly, and Blake, her best friend, jumped in to protect her. In the process, his head was smashed backwards onto the ground, and Nick proceeded to attack him. Blake is no longer moving. Shelly's freaking out. He still has a pulse. And there's a doctor headed out to the house to check him. Meanwhile, the paramedics are taking away the one person that was buried alive, that nobody knows who she is or how she got there. They're taking her away in the ambulance because she's in critical condition. So that's where we're at right now. Shelly's freaking out. Nobody's taking care of her best friend. She doesn't know what to do. She doesn't know if he's actually going to be okay. She knows that he's got some major head trauma, and that they're going to have to wait about 30 minutes for a doctor to get there. So, without further ado, let's jump right in and see what's going to happen next. Here we go. Chapter 17. A newer officer accompanied me as we headed towards the porch. "Are you sure you're okay? Not injured at all?" He kept questioning. Although I appreciated his concern, I just wanted to focus on hurrying to the house to be by Blake's side. Nothing else mattered right now. "Oh my God, Ben!" I exclaimed, seeing Ben sitting on the porch. I felt awful for having forgotten about him. An officer was asking him questions as Ben was holding what appeared to be an ice pack to his head. As the light from the officer's flashlight reflected off of something shiny near the porch, I realized it was the missing shovel. In that moment, all the pieces seemed to click into place. The shovel being over here, Ben holding an ice pack to his head, and the fact that Nick had been missing for the duration it took us to dig up the graves. I hurried to Ben. "Are you okay?" "Yeah, I'm fine. I'm not one to be taken out by a measly shovel," he attempted to joke, putting an arm around me. "Okay, good. Hey, where did they take Blake?" I questioned, sounding more impatient than I had meant to. "They took him upstairs to his room. The doctor just arrived." "Okay, I'm gonna go see how he's doing." "Shelly, I know you're worried about him. We all are. But we need you to let the doctor do what he needs to do, without getting in the way. He said he'll let us know as soon as we can see him." I nodded as a stray tear escaped my eye. Ben wiped it away. "You know Blake is strong. He'll pull through." I nodded again before whispering, "I know." However, I didn't know if he was going to be okay. I knew he was strong. There was never any question about that. But being strong and overcoming a serious head injury were two totally different things. "Ma'am, I hate to have to do this, but I'm going to need to ask you a few questions," the officer that had been questioning Ben said, motioning towards the door in such a way that indicated that he wanted me to go into the house. We sat on the couch as he proceeded to question me. He asked me to recall the events of the day leading up to the discovery of the victims. As I did, I couldn't stop my body from shaking, or the tears from flooding my eyes. When I had finished, he indicated that he had received congruent stories from both Noah and Ben, aside from one major detail. Noah had informed the officer that he had been the one who had stabbed Nick in the neck. I looked at him shocked. "Look, I'm going to speak to you off the books right now. Noah and I have known each other for a very long time, so if he tells me that he wants the record to indicate it was him who did it, rather than you, I have to think that he has a good reason. There's no doubt in my mind that it was done in self-defense, so no one's in trouble here. My best guess is he thinks it would be protecting you in some way. However, I don't have any more information than that. Any questions will have to be directed at him. Now, I'll ask you one more time, for the record. How did Noah's knife end up in Nick's neck?" Was this a trick? Was he trying to see if I'd lie? Was he trying to set Noah up? I was almost scared to answer, so I answered in the most roundabout way possible. It got there exactly how Noah said it did. The officer gave a little laugh. Alright, well, okay then. Here's my number if you should think of or need anything else, he said, handing me his card and motioning for Noah to enter. The officer stepped back as Noah approached. Hey, are you okay? Yeah, nothing a few stitches couldn't take care of, he replied with a tired smile. Can I ask you something? Sure. How come you said that it was you who stabbed Nick? Oh, that. It's just less messy that way, and you won't have to worry about anything in the long run, he replied, giving me a gentle pat on the back. You didn't have to do that, but thank you. It's the least I could do, considering everything you've had to endure due to my cousin. Speaking of that, I'm sorry about what happened. He was still your cousin, despite everything that transpired. Were you too close? The way he had spoken of you before we came, I had assumed you were. However, the longer we were here, it almost seemed as though he had flipped a switch. I wasn't sure what to think anymore. Actually, no. I'd only met him once when we were in our teens. When they had learned his dad, my dad's estranged brother, had cancer, with only a few months to live. It wasn't until my parents passed away that he showed back up. He then came and stayed for the summer last year. That's when we finally started to get a little closer. So to put it simply, no, we have never been very close. But never in a million years had I thought he was a sociopath. My jaw dropped as I recalled the chilling story Nick had told about the murderer from the 1940s who had 2 sons, one of which who had left to get away from his monster of a father. As I studied Noah's face, I couldn't help but wonder if that was his family's story. Had it been about their fathers? I know it's a lot to take in. We all have a lot to wrap our heads around. Why don't you just try and go get cleaned up, and then you should probably check to see if Blake's okay? Noah said, giving my shoulder a little squeeze. Yeah, I think I'll go do that. As the water enveloped me in the shower, I couldn't help but break down and cry once again. It still didn't feel real. I had taken a killer's life in exchange to save my best friends, and I would do it all over again in a heartbeat. However, it was a hard pill to swallow, realizing that now meant I was a killer too. The mixed emotions swirling around within me were dizzying. I knew the only hope I had of feeling any better right now was being by my best friend's side. That was it. I had to see Blake, had to know he was okay. I quickly climbed out and got dressed before heading to his room. The door was slightly ajar, and I could see the doctor writing something down. I knocked gently. Yes, come in. Hi, doctor. How is he? I questioned, fearful of the possibility that I'd be receiving news that I couldn't handle. Well, his vitals are good. However, he has yet to wake up. All we can do now is wait. When he does wake up, I'd have him make an appointment with a primary care doctor just to give him a once-over. However, if he should fail to wake up within the next 24 hours, I'd look at getting him to the hospital immediately. But like I said, everything seems fine from what I can tell, so I wouldn't be too concerned just yet. Sorry, I can't help it, I said with a nervous laugh as I attempted to hold back tears. I had already cried more than enough today. It was time for me to be strong now. Well, it sounds like I'm leaving him in good hands then, the doctor said with a reassuring smile as he packed up his things and proceeded to head downstairs to talk to Noah and Ben. I took a deep breath and slowly approached the bed. Chapter 18. At first glance, Blake looked to be peacefully resting. However, as I drew nearer, the bruising under his eye, from where that monster had gotten a punch in, became apparent. Seeing him like this made me feel even less remorseful for taking Nick's life. In my mind, I had done what I had to do to prevent him from doing anything to cause any further damage, present or future. I had seen far too many horror movies where the victims let the killers live, just to regret it later when the killer comes back for them and their loved ones. At least that wasn't something we'd have to worry about in the future. I couldn't help but wonder what Blake was going to think. Would he see it as me having stepped up and doing what had to be done? Or would he hate me for taking a life? What ifs and worrisome thoughts began to plague my mind. I shook my head. That was something I'd have to worry about later. Right now, I just needed him to wake up. And gently stroking his face, I leaned down and kissed his forehead before whispering, Blake, I need you to be okay. I need my best friend right now. Getting no response, I sighed. As I glanced around, I spotted a chair over in the corner. Pulling it next to the bed, I sat, taking Blake's hand in mine. I have never been so scared in my life as I was tonight. Not for myself, but because I almost lost you. You are the most important person in my world. I wish I would have said that to you sooner, just to make sure you knew it. I guess I never said it out loud because I'd assumed it was common knowledge. However, in lieu of recent events, I'm starting to think that may not be the case. I'm so sorry if you didn't know that. If you didn't know that I consider you in everything that I do. God. I hope when you wake up that you understand why I had to do what I did and don't hate me for it. It was to protect you, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat. I took a deep breath in an attempt to keep my emotions at bay. Holding his hand to my cheek, I felt that familiar calming effect that he always seemed to have on me. I need you to wake up, not only to make sure you're going to be okay, but because we have some talking to do. First, I need to get to the root of what's been bothering you and fix that. Then, the subject needs to be addressed that your brother and Noah seem to think that there is something more between us than just friendship. If I'm being honest, I think they're right. Well, in regards to my feelings anyway. I'm a little nervous to find out if you feel the same. I jumped, feeling him flinch. I stared at him intently, attempting to determine if he was actually waking up. Blake? I said softly, stroking his face. His chiseled features seemed even more pronounced right now. I couldn't help but think how handsome he looked, even in his current condition. Getting no response yet again, I decided I'd better get comfortable. As I began to let go of his hand to adjust the chair, my heart skipped a beat when he caught me in his firm grasp. Blake? I questioned. Still no response. What the hell? He was definitely holding onto my hand. Tightly, might I add. So, what was going on? Blake, are you okay? Are you in any pain? He slowly opened his eyes, which immediately darted to my face. I watched as he silently looked me over from head to toe. Are you hurt? He finally asked. I'm fine, thanks to you and, well, Noah's knife. He raised a brow before wincing in pain. Reaching up, he ran his finger along the bruising below his eye. He got you pretty good, but don't worry, you still look handsome, I teased. Where is he? He questioned in a low, cold tone. Then it hit me. He didn't know what had transpired. He had been unconscious. Oh, I said, giving his hand a little squeeze. I opened my mouth to respond before closing it again, realizing I didn't know where to start. This was it, the moment of truth. Time to find out how he was going to react to what I had done. Just tell me, Shelly, what's going on? Look, you scared me half to death. I was worried I was going to lose you for a moment there. Can I just take a second to hug you and be thankful that we're both okay before we get into all of that? Without a word, he pulled me down into his arms. The tightness of his embrace made me feel a whirlwind of emotions, but above all, I felt both safe and loved. I clung on to him, not wanting to move. We stayed that way for a few minutes. I wasn't sure which of us had been needing it more. He finally kissed me on the forehead before letting go. You didn't answer me. Where is he? He won't be bothering anyone ever again, I replied, too scared to say what had actually happened, seeing his reaction. What does that mean? I knew I had no options left. I had to tell him the truth. Seeing him hurt you like that, I pulled out the knife Noah had given me and... I paused. And? He questioned. And I took it from her before plowing it into his neck. The paramedics declared him deceased upon arrival. They took the mystery girl to the hospital and are attempting to ID her. The rest of the remains have been picked up by the coroner, Noah said, coming to stand beside me. I was fighting hard to keep the tears at bay that threatened to fill my eyes at any second, and I could tell Blake knew it. Is that true? He questioned, looking directly at me. I couldn't look at him. I couldn't stand to lie to him. I felt like I could throw up. Blake continued. The last thing I remember was you were behind me, and Noah was in front of me on the ground, bleeding everywhere. You two were on opposite sides. And Noah looked at me. I could tell he was willing to stick to the story if I wanted him to. How I wished it were that simple. However, I knew if I lied to Blake, I wouldn't be able to live with myself. Thanks, I said to Noah with a sad smile. He nodded. He understood what I was going through. No, it was me, I said, too ashamed to look at him. But let's just get one thing straight. According to the police report, it was me. That's what I went on record saying, and everyone here needs to stick to that. It's to keep her safe, Noah said, shooting Blake a strange look. Blake said nothing but nodded in such a way that it seemed as though they had some unspoken understanding. I finally brought myself to look straight at Blake. However, as I did, he turned his head the other way, running his hand through his hair. Blake? I questioned. When he ignored me, Noah spoke up. Hey, why don't you go check on Ben really quick, while I catch Blake up on everything? And maybe grab some water and aspirin on your way back up. I nodded reluctantly, before taking my leave. My heart was hurting. Blake hadn't even been able to look at me after learning what I had done. Still leery of everyone and everything, I lingered outside the doorway momentarily, listening as they began to speak about what had transpired. Well, there I had it. If he was speaking to Noah with no problem, it was pretty clear that the problem was me. He hated me for what I had done, even if I had done it to save his life. I found Ben lying on the couch in the living room. "How's the head?" "Hurts. What's going on up there?" "Blake's up. Seems to be doing good." "See? Told you he'd be fine." "Yeah," I said, attempting to force a smile. "Uh-oh. What's up? I know that look." He pried, sitting up and patting the couch next to him. I sat down and caught him up on everything that had transpired since Blake woke up. I also disclosed that I had been secretly worried about Blake hating me upon learning that I had been the cause of Nick's demise. You should have seen the look on his face. He couldn't even look at me. "Shelly, I find that hard to believe that he'd be upset with you for saving his life. Hell, with the way he feels about you, I'm sure he'd forgive you for far worse." "Far worse?" I questioned. I mean, I had literally taken a life. "Let me go up and check on him. How about you go and change into some comfy clothes and pop back over to his room in a few minutes?" Ben seemed like he had something up his sleeve, so I agreed and proceeded to go grab the aspirin and water. Chapter 19. After changing, I sucked in a deep breath and headed back over to Blake's room. Upon seeing my face, Blake immediately stopped talking. I awkwardly continued towards the bed. "Here," I said, handing him the aspirin. "Thanks," he replied, turning in the opposite direction. "Hey, Noah and I are going to head downstairs. We'll leave you two to it," Ben said with a mischievous smile. I knew he meant well, but he had completely misread the situation. It was quite clear, at least to me anyway, that Blake wanted nothing to do with me right now, and it was killing me. After the guys left, an awkward silence filled the air as I attempted to figure out what to say. This was my best friend. Why did I feel so nervous? "So, how are you feeling?" "I'm tired. I think I'm just going to go to sleep. See you tomorrow," he said, closing his eyes and making it quite apparent that he wanted me to leave. It felt like a little piece of my heart was breaking. A part of me had hoped that this whole ordeal would remind him of how much stronger we were together and help us move past whatever it was that had been going on. However, it seemed that it had done nothing but widen the rift. Without a word, I headed back to my room. As I sat on my bed, everything that had transpired replayed in my mind like a broken record. I silently wiped a tear away. To top it off, the wind had picked back up outside, and the eerie howling sent chills down my spine. Despite how bothersome it all was, and how miserable I was feeling, I couldn't help but worry about Blake as well. I was worried about him both physically and mentally. Although he had been holding everything inside for the most part, I knew he was hurting. I had seen it in his eyes. I knew there was no way I was going to be able to sleep if I didn't at least try again with him. This time, I was going to play it smart. I knew what I needed to do. I tiptoed back to his room and gently knocked on the door. "Blake, are you awake?" As I got closer, I could see that his eyes were open as the light from the moon danced in through the window. "I can't sleep. I'm not alone in this house. Especially after everything that has happened. Can I please stay with you?" I could see him staring at me. "Please? I get that you're not talking to me or don't want to be around me or whatever, but I need you right now," I was saying when he surprised me by pulling back the blanket and scooting over. As I lay down next to him, I couldn't help but smile. Nothing had ever felt better than the way he wrapped his arms around me, pulled me back into him right then. As he nuzzled his face in my hair, I wrapped my arms around his. I loved the way he held me. For the first time since we had gotten here, everything felt quiet, peaceful even, and I knew it was because of him. He always had an amazing effect on me. As he continued to hold me, I wondered if I had the same effect on him in this moment. "I'm sorry," he whispered a few moments later. "Oh, phew. So you don't hate me? Wait, why are you sorry?" I questioned, realizing what he had said. "I don't hate you. How could I ever hate you? I hate that you got blood on your hands. That you were forced to take a life and have to live with that now because of me. I hate that I wasn't able to protect you." "You're joking, right? You literally stopped his attempt to harpoon me. If not for you, things wouldn't have played out as they did. They could have turned out far worse. Hell, I may not have been sitting right here right now, if not for you. The only thing I'm struggling with is the fact that I feel like I should feel worse or more guilty that he died by my hand. Yet, every time I think about it, all I feel is relief, and as though my actions were no more than a justified reaction. I was protecting someone I love." I abruptly stopped talking. That had slipped out. I hadn't meant it how it sounded. Or had I? "What did you say?" Completely ignoring his question, I asked a question on my own. Blake, can I ask you something?
Yeah, go ahead.
If the tables had been turned, and you were in my position, would you have done the same thing?
In a heartbeat. I don't take well to people messing with or attempting to hurt what is mine.
What's yours? I questioned, a bit confused as to what he had been referring to.
You, Shelly. I don't care if it's another guy, a serial killer, or even a ghost. No one else can have you. You are mine, my best friend, my reason for going on every day, my whole world, and I'll always do everything in my power to protect what's mine. My breath caught. Did he mean? If that's okay with you. If not, just tell me now. It's time we got this over with, he continued.
Got this over with? Wait, are you meaning us more than just friends?
Forget it,
he said, starting to pull his arm away. He had kept his arm wrapped around me tightly until that point. I caught his hand, pulling his arm back around me as it had been.
Don't do that.
I told you. I need you.
Damn it, Shelly. Just tell me what you want.
As he said that, I realized that I had been asking him to give me what I needed, but not giving him what he needed in return. He needed to hear me say it, say the words I'd been too scared to say out loud. You. I want you. I want you to stay my best friend. Cutting me off mid-sentence, he began to pull his arm away again. This time I rolled over so that we were now face to face. I told you not to do that. Don't let go. Just listen. As I was saying, I want you. No, need you to stay my best friend. I couldn't go on without it. However, that doesn't mean that I only want you as my best friend. I want all of you in absolutely every way possible. We sort of already have the foundation for the perfect relationship.
What the heck, Shelly? Don't you think I've been through enough for one night? You couldn't have just started with that?
He blurted out, pulling me in so tightly I could barely breathe. He then pulled me back slightly, looking me dead in the eye.
So, like I said, you are mine, and only mine.
The smirk on his face as he said it was beyond sexy. Although I saw it coming, I still felt caught off guard as he leaned in, pressing his lips against mine. Describing it as perfect would be a complete understatement. Not only did it lack the awkwardness that typically accompanies first kisses, but it sent a wave of warm, tiny little sparks coursing through me. I had never dreamt I would have been able to sleep after everything that had transpired just hours before, but being in his arms that night, I got the best night's sleep I had gotten in a long time. Chapter 20. The next morning, as I awoke, I realized that I was still in Blake's arms. I remained still, savoring every minute of it. As he shifted and began to open his eyes, I hugged onto him tightly. I wasn't ready to let go yet. He tightened his embrace.
Good morning, beautiful. How'd you sleep?
Surprisingly, it was the best sleep that I've had in, well, as long as I can remember. Thanks for that.
Well, when something's meant to be, it just feels right. Don't get me wrong. Having you in my life has always felt right. But what happened last night, well, reassured me that we are an absolute perfect fit.
The flirtation in his voice and the smile that tugged at the corners of his mouth as he spoke made my heart race. As he pulled me in and kissed me, the same sparks that had enveloped me last night went coursing through me once again, and I knew this was the man that I was meant to be with. I saw a pained look flash across his face as he reached up and rubbed his head. "How's your head?" I questioned, as the awful image of that monster smashing Blake's head into the ground flashed through my mind.
"It hurts like hell, but your kisses are making it tolerable."
"Okay, sweet talker. Let's go get you something for the pain." As we opened the door to head downstairs, we heard a male voice that we didn't recognize. Blake grasped my arm, holding me back beside him as we listened quietly.
"Do you recognize this?"
the voice questioned.
"Yeah, I believe it was Millie's,"
Noah replied.
"Wrong. This one in the blue bag was the one found on Millie. This is the second one found on Charlotte, our mystery woman. We've tied almost identical bracelets to other missing and murder victims spanning back over the last 50 years or so." "I don't understand. What does any of this mean?" "We think we're looking at a team of serial killers, or possibly a copycat situation."
With that, I couldn't stop my body from shaking. I was fairly certain I knew the truth behind this. I had heard it from the murderer himself.
"What's wrong? Nick's gone. You don't have to worry anymore,"
Blake said, wrapping his arms around me. "That's not it. I just realized that Nick had told us this story. Just, none of us had realized it at the time." As we made our way downstairs, the bracelets on the table caught my eye. I froze dead in my tracks as the realization hit me that the bracelet
Noah and I had found amongst the trees most likely had been intended for me. The day I had found the bracelet and note on the dresser in my room, Nick had said he had forgotten something in the house that he had to run back in and grab before we headed out. We waited in the car for him for close to 5 minutes. However, when he returned to the car, he hadn't brought anything with him, or at least we didn't think he had. It wasn't until that night that I realized it had disappeared. But how the heck had it ended up out by the trees? Oh yes. When I thought that I had seen Millie amongst the trees on the way home from the investigation, Nick had jerked the car into park and jumped out running through the trees like a madman. His antics were an attempt to drive the point home that the paranormal investigation had frightened me. He must have had the bracelet with him and dropped it without realizing it. Oh God. That meant that the empty grave most likely had been intended for, well, me. Morning, you two. Shelly, you okay? Ben questioned with a concerned look. Blake and I made our way down the remaining stairs. Yes, I'm just feeling a bit uneasy as all the pieces seem to be coming together. Care to enlighten us? Noah's officer friend questioned. I retold the story Nick had told us about the serial killer who had 2 sons, and how he had proceeded to say that the bloodline lived on, even today. I then explained how I had found the bracelet in my room, and everything that followed. The officer took notes, as all eyes were glued to me. Then it hit me. The neighbor hadn't been wearing a bracelet. When I brought it up, the officer presented the theory that it was most likely due to the fact that her killing hadn't been premeditated. She had either gotten in the way somehow, or caught Nick doing something that she wasn't supposed to see. The last possibility was that he was attempting to throw the police off his scent and pin everything on Noah. This seemed like the most plausible explanation given the story he had attempted to spin to us about Noah stabbing him. He claimed Noah had done it in order to keep him from discovering what was hidden out in the mounds of dirt. The officer then proceeded to share that they had ID'd Charlotte, the mystery woman, from her fingerprints. Apparently, she had a couple of minor run-ins with the law previously. However, she remained in critical condition, yet to wake up. Before leaving, the officer informed us that we were required to stay in town for an additional 24 hours, just in case any follow-ups needed to be done, or they had any further questions. Although we knew Noah was innocent, Blake refused to leave my side for the remainder of the day. We all came back together for dinner. How do you two feel about heading home after breakfast tomorrow? Honestly, I'm ready to head out now, Blake replied sarcastically. What about you, Noah? Are you going to be okay all the way out here, considering everything that has transpired? I questioned, feeling a bit bad for him. I actually have asked him to come stay with us for a while. A friend of mine from school just got licensed as a therapist, and I think the change of scenery could do him some good. Noah nodded in agreement, whereas the scowl plastered on Blake's face made it quite apparent he wasn't terribly happy with this new development. As we headed back upstairs to begin packing, Blake whispered, How do you feel about me staying at your place for a while when we get home? I smiled. I think I could handle that. That's my girl, he said, kissing my forehead. Alright guys, that is a wrap. Next time we will be starting back up with Chapter 21. Have a good night, Midnight Readers.